told you about a time when 50,000 tons of metal was destroyed by water. Would you believe that the same compound that we rely on for life, good old H2O, also has the power to take down 50,000 tons of metal? Well, this is what happened in the case of the Titanic. The sinking of the Titanic was caused by multiple accounts of gross negligence. We've all seen the movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, but I think some of the events that actually occurred will shock you. Today I'm going to tell you about the negligence that led to the catastrophic loss of life the night of April 15th, 1912, including high-ranking officers ignoring warnings of ice fields ahead, the use of cheap materials, and the lack of lifeboats available. First, there were reports which state there were multiple radio transmissions warning the Titanic of ice fields in the waters ahead. The crew received 4 messages related to the icebergs and the dangerous water they were headed straight into. According to the article titled, "How Many Iceberg Warnings Did the Titanic Receive?" the United States Senate conducted an investigation into the sinking of the Titanic. It was discovered that there were 3 warnings that explicitly mentioned the icebergs in the area. They also discovered a 4th warning that said there was already a ship stuck in a patch of ice. Sarah Pruitt's article, "Why Did the Titanic Sink?" states that even after receiving warnings of treacherous waters, the Titanic continued sailing on at full speed. According to Pruitt, the captain of the Titanic, E.J. Smith, ignored the warnings and continued pushing the Titanic at 22 knots. Some think that the reason he disregarded the warnings was because he was trying to beat the sailing speed of the Olympia, the Titanic's sister ship. At the high speed through the iceberg-infested waters, it is no wonder that the Titanic hit an iceberg. After collision, the Titanic was damaged and took on water extremely fast. The damage spread quickly, and the ship was actually found in 2 pieces on the ocean floor. Second, upon inspection of the sunken ship, scientists found material that showed there were shortcuts taken in order to cut down production time and costs. According to Justin Uhr's article, "The Secret of How the Titanic Sank," Robert Ballard, an oceanographer, found the Titanic in 1985 and was able to recover pieces for testing. The tests showed evidence that low-quality steel might have caused the accident. A bit of the recovered steel was placed in freezing cold water to recreate the circumstances of that night. It shattered when hit with a hammer. However, when a larger sample of the steel was put through the same test, it actually held together. Uhr's also wrote about tests by scientists Jennifer Hooper McCarty and Tim Folk, which argue that the problem was not with the steel, but the metal pins that held the steel plates together, called rivets. The rivets that were recovered were found to have high levels of slag, which is defined as a residue of smelting that can make metal fracture-prone or easily breakable. These lower-quality materials were used because the shipyard that built the Titanic was building 3 large ships simultaneously. Third, everyone that has seen the film knows that there were not enough lifeboats, but the reason why there weren't might surprise you. The Titanic actually only had 20 lifeboats on board. According to Jim Whiting in his article, "Titanic, Not Enough Lifeboats," the original plans for the ship included 64 lifeboats, but when it set sail, the number had been slashed in half almost twice, because the owner didn't want the deck to be too cluttered. The Titanic actually had 4 more lifeboats than were required during that time. Most of the similar ships of the day also did not carry enough lifeboats because it was thought that by the time a ship of that size could actually sink, they would have enough time to ferry all the passengers off onto a rescue ship. But after the horrific events of that night, the regulations were amended to state that all ships have to have enough lifeboats to carry all the passengers. Whiting also tells of the safety inspector, Maurice Clark, who wrote notes to the Titanic's owner to add 10 lifeboats 5 hours before the ship set sail. He was ignored because the owner did not want to delay the departure time. But if the owner had listened to the safety inspector and added those 10 lifeboats, almost 700 more lives could have been saved. Even with only 20 lifeboats available, they were not filled to capacity. According to the article, "The Titanic Lifeboats," when being tested for safety, each lifeboat could carry 70 men. Specifically, lifeboat number 6 could carry 65 people, but it left the Titanic saving only 40. In conclusion, the Titanic was extorted into a greater disaster by negligence on the part of the builders and owner of the ship. Today I told you about 3 of the reasons that the sinking of the Titanic was extorted into one of the most notorious disasters in history. The many ignored radio transmissions, the low-quality materials, and the lack of lifeboats contributed to the disastrous events on the night of April 15, 1912. So if someone else claims to have built an unsinkable ship, remember to learn from history so a catastrophe as extreme as this one is not repeated.